Welcome back, family, to another episode of Truth Be Told podcast, where we'll be telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So, Jesus help us. I am coming back with another message. I wanted to touch quickly on the Matrix. I see a lot of conversations pertaining to the Matrix and what everyone kind of thinks that pertains to, what it's all about. So, of course, I got to dive in and give my perspective, as you know, right? So, that's my goal, to provide the truth, some enlightenment, insight, whatever have you. So, let's get straight into it. Now, if you've been here, you already know we start off a lot of things with definitions because to get to the root of things, right, you definitely need to look at the words you're using to describe these things before you subscribe to them, right? And if you study words, language, English, right, you are taught very early about the etymology of words and basically breaking down the words from prefix, root, and suffix, right? So every word has a root and things like that. So to me, that's how you get to the root of what the words that we use or ideas that we come up with are actually saying, right? Or what they're actually rooted in. So a matrix is defined as an environment or material in which something develops, or a surrounding medium or structure. So essentially, a matrix is an environment in which something develops, right? So basically, we've created our own ecosystem within the real ecosystem of fictitious reality, not just the ones you see on TV, right? So, The Matrix, if you ask me my humble opinion, The Matrix is the virtual reality we've created, where suits and ties supersede the souls we're tied to, where paychecks outweigh purpose, where we allow fancy labels to somehow label our worth, where money matters more than mankind. That is the Matrix in a nutshell. We've basically plugged in and subscribed to everything they sold us, convincing us to sell our souls for paychecks, neglecting our purpose. If you've been here, you know I'm all about striving for your purpose, not just a pension or paycheck. It's deeper than that. And when you are serving in your purpose, the money, the abundance, inheritance, knowledge, information, all of that will flow to you. When you're on your path, there's no traffic, and you will get to where you are destined to go, which is your destiny, right? But the masters of the matrix know this, right? They can't have us all walking around in our divinity, in our God-given purpose. They need us to be puppets to fulfill their agenda. Because let's face it, if we're all focused on purpose, all of us aren't going to be subscribing to the capitalism of it all, right? So we will begin to see just how much money doesn't really matter, right? Just a green piece of paper at the end of the day. And we will get to basically the root of why we're here, right? The essence of our soul, what we are meant to do while we're here. So if you don't, if this isn't resonating with you, leave it for someone that it does. But this page, this channel, this topic is basically rooted in the belief that we have a purpose here in life, not just to make money, buy a bunch of cool stuff, and perish, right? And typically, we are here trying to make as much money as possible and leave it to the next generation. But what are we teaching the next generations about morality, respect, ethics, values, purpose, all of those things? So that's something we should keep in mind. Many of us, it's funny, have come to the belief that the world itself is a simulation or a matrix. If you are a science person, you can look at the interstitial matrix, right? If you're not a science person, don't even go down that road. That's just something to correlate this idea that I'm trying to convey to you guys so you can get a clearer understanding. I know some people are visual learners, some people need something tangible or visual to look at to actually grasp certain concepts. So if you need that, look at interstitial matrices if you're a science person. It's definitely grid like when you think of the matrix, right? And I even believe that is kind of depicted in the movie. I can't remember. I probably need to go back and watch it. Definitely need to watch the second one. If you haven't watched the second one, here's your call to go watch it. My son told me it was probably the best one. So think of longitude and latitude lines on a map, right? Think of how that's something we've created, right? We've created a system of tangible, measurable things because after all, as humans, we typically need something tangible for it to be believable or for it to be reality, right? Quote unquote. So, for instance, the careers where your success is measured by the amount of money you make. These are all man made concepts. So, if you're thinking about when I mentioned the longitude and latitude lines, these are fictional lines that are created on a map, right? Man made. And this basically is what we've done with the matrix. We've created these systems and circumstances to operate within, neglecting the spiritual nature of things, neglecting nature itself, unfortunately. So we've created our own world within the world. And it's time that we unplug from the matrix, get plugged back in to the source, right? You'll always hear me saying that. These are all man made concepts. We're so focused on the tangible, we lack emotion, true connection to each other and the planet. The matrix is the systems we have been plugged into. Like I said, mainly capitalism. The system of capitalism is comprised of pyramid schemes. When you think about it, just think about it, right? A bunch of smaller individuals on a lower level working to benefit someone at the top who's taking more of the percentage of the income. A small percentage at the top with all the resources and land, while the majority of the world or the company, so you can look at this in a global scale, we can look at this within companies and systems, right? There's always somebody at the top eating more than the people at the bottom. So, those of the majority who have the resources and land, while the rest of the world, the minority at the top who have all the resources and land, while the majority of the world or the company, right, because they make up that bigger lower half, remains at the bottom with so much stacked upon them, the climb to the top feels impossible. Another of its symptoms or systems, whichever you like to call it, is the educational system. I will beat this horse till it turns black and blue. The educational system is in America. Let me say that the educational system in America, something to be called into question, right? Its primary goal is to socialize the masses, not truly educate, right? We have so many people who graduate with little to no wisdom, but instead with a bunch of memorized procedures as a manuscript on how to conduct oneself in society or how to complete prescribed job duties, right? A bunch of programmed machines, right? So we are upset at robots, and we ourselves have been programmed to be robotic. go to school, go to work, get a degree, get the paycheck, pay the bills, eat, live, TV, die, right? We've been well informed and conditioned on how to remain and respect the authority figures in the situations we find ourselves in, right? So we're basically socialized and taught how to remain in our place, how to stay stagnant as a bottom feeder, a worker, not the boss, the employee. Again, you can take that on a company scale, you can take this on a personal level, we can look at this on a familial level, you can look at it at a company level, on a global scale, right? And the one thing we have to understand is once you get an understanding of how a system works, you can then apply that knowledge to larger systems, right? We're essentially taught to be robotic, to remain in our place. Never are we taught to think independently, think comprehensively for ourselves. Groupthink is always encouraged. I kind of heard, I hate to say it, but sheeple mentality. We have to take ourselves out of the situation enough, out of our feelings enough, out of our ego enough to look at this situation from a higher perspective, right? We learn to be performative for applause or popularity. Again, we can take that in family relationships, friendships, school hierarchies, right, into the bigger global system of socialism and the hierarchies that are ingrained within that, right? And those of high intelligence are often segregated due to their intellect. Instead of their intellect being integrated as an asset, it is basically regarded as a intellectual phenomenon, like you're kind of one in a million, instead of people learning how to use those intellectual individuals to their greatest advantage, right? So then you have the stigma that's placed on people who kind of think and from this higher perspective, or who think independently, kind of form their own ideas and concepts about how they perceive the world and the systems and circumstances we find ourselves in, right? Locally, globally, you name it. These people are ostracized. You're either called like a nerd in school, you are, the oddball at work that doesn't feed into the kind of water tank conversation, the water cooler conversations, the gossip, the drama, right? Then people start to look at you like you feel like you're better than, when in reality, you just recognize that we all are better than this, right? That we all can contribute higher level thinking and conversations to the collective that actually benefit us as a whole. How beneficial would it be if we had embraced people who think differently, and not just those people, but everyone thinking on a truly critical thinking level, comprehensively, independently, dropping the sort of toxic think tank mentality, following what's trendy to talk about, right? I talk about that all the time. It's trendy to be woke now, but how many people actually apply the knowledge, right? That's what wisdom is. You can have all the knowledge you want, but without the application of it, you don't live your life accordingly. So how beneficial would it be if we could learn from these individuals instead of criticizing them, to become our best selves, right? So that's what we need to keep in mind when we are discussing the matrices of the world. It is just the systems we have in place to keep us entrapped in that little grid of thinking, right? When there's a whole bigger world outside of that, right? So we've created the box for ourselves to be contained in, when really there's so much more outside of the box, there's so much more outside of the world. There's so much more to see than just what we've been taught to see. There's so much more to value than what we've been taught to value, right? We should be valuing human lives. We should be valuing our souls, our purpose, our path. We should value integrity and moving with such, right? We should be valuing source, a higher power. How do we achieve and attain what we were sent or called to do here on the planet? So, that is my message for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can be enlightened on this path of enlightenment, right? This is the channel of enlightenment and encouragement. So I encourage you to go in love and light wherever you go. Seek purpose, not a paycheck. It's time to unplug the whole damn matrix. Don't even just unplug yourself. It's time to unplug the entire matrix so we can see the world as we were intended to from a higher perspective. Until next time, peace, y'all.